the science and profession of public administration can advance human rights. Verily, for much of the history of government in this part of the globe, administrative power has been used to trample down human rights and fundamental freedoms. The editorial, for example, entitled Aves de Rapiña, or Birds of Prey, penned more than a century ago by Fidel Reyes in El Renacimiento, was a scathing denunciation of the corrupt motives behind the natural resources inventory, conservatism, and exploitation policies of Interior Secretary Dean Worcester, the quintessential American bureaucrat. The public condemnation and hefty fines suffered by the Reyes and his fellow journalists as a result of Worcester's ensuing vendetta was nothing compared to the long-term intergenerational effects engendered by the rapacious natural resources and land use regimes installed by colonial administrators and perpetuated by their colonial-minded successors. Fast forward to the 21st century, and we see a bureaucracy still plagued by the inertia of fossilized habits, hardly the environment conducive to the building of a culture of human rights. The CHR, more than any other agency of government, is also guilty of this. A quarter of a century since its founding, CHR is still grappling with the limiting features of entrenched bureaucratic habits, even as it professes full compliance with the Paris Principles. I must admit that in this particular area, there has been and there continues to be a lot of spinning as regards the real picture of the CHR's institutional capacity to promote and protect human rights, pursuant to its mandate as the National Human Rights Institution. See, the very first step to solving a problem is to admit who you are and what your mistakes are. Thus, we can proudly say that we refuse to be held back by the Byzantine reality that envelopes us today. Today's headlines point to the dismal performance of the Aquino administration in terms of realizing justice for the victims of gross human rights violations. Impunity, many sectors say, is here to stay under Pinoy. But ending impunity is certainly not the task of one man, not even the most powerful official in the land. It is a task that cannot be accomplished in one presidential term. That's hard, but we must learn to accept the reality. We must come to terms with ourselves first if we want to relate to the rest of the world. The difficulties seen by civil society groups in terms of hunting down, arresting, and prosecuting known human rights violators like General Palparan, Binayog. Remember Binayog with the one who was pulling the strings? You all know Binayog. The Reyes brothers, Governor and Mayor Reyes, Congressman Ecleo, and the Ampatuan Patriarch and his sons have more to do with the fragility of our governance framework than with any notion of the strength or weakness of its leader. There was another witness, the sixth witness. There was guilt for the Ampatuan case. It's terrible. But simply put, the resolution of one human rights violation requires the coherent, efficient, and corruption-free operation of the state's administrative machinery. Secretary Jesse mentioned this a lot of times, how to blend politics and the machinery, administrative machinery. A near impossibility in the light of long-standing barriers to empowerment. especially of those who run this machinery, the power wielders. I would like to elaborate on this point by sharing the CHR's rather positive experience with the public sector workers in a far-flung municipality located in the Pacific coast of the island of Samar. Sinong taga-Samar po sa atin? Ayan. Mga taga-Samar kayo. This is Eastern Samar. It's a beautiful experience and I want to share it with you. Kasi far-flung siya, and that's where empowerment, should be. In August 2005, okay ba sa inyo makinig? Okay na makinig ng konti. In August 2005, the Regional Trial Court ruled that Francisco Adamin was the duly elected mayor of the municipality of Taft, Eastern Samar, and unseated Diego Lim, who had been proclaimed winner in the 2004 elections. So already you saw the court intervening through some manipulation against the will of the people who elected Lim. Okay? Lim refused to vacate the municipal hall. This sounds so commonplace with us. And so Adalim held office in his sister's hotel. He issued a memorandum directing all LGU employees to report to and hold office in the hotel. 29 out of the 54 employees refused to leave their stations in the municipal hall and continued to work there. As a result, Adalim dropped them from the rolls arbitrarily. By April 2006, the 29 employees had all but given up hope. The last time they were paid their salaries was in July 2005. Worse, a few weeks later in May, Adalim forcibly took over the municipal hall and refused them entry to their workstations. For the next 5 years, these civil servants in this little municipality of Taft in Eastern Samar, department heads to utility workers, took turns sharing the one bangko that Adalim suffered them to use on the porch of the municipio. Bangko, bench. They were there. They held their office in the bench, believe it or not. Even worse, the people, their own neighbors, no longer seem to care about their plight. Kapagod na, supporting them. People just passed by them casting pitiful stares, but acceding to the reality foisted upon them by Adalim. It didn't help that the Civil Service Commission, the central personal agency of government, took the better of the next 5 years, resolving the case with finality under Francisco Duque. And even in 2009, when at last the CSC's ruling reinstating the employees became final and executory under the rules, Adalim refused to budge. Ayaw na niya. Ano gagawin niyo? It took the CSC another year to hold Adalim in contempt. But to no avail. See, the directives, the orders were being given, but he just refused to budge. In the meantime, the order took its toll on the employees. Of the 29, 4 died one after the other of stress-induced conditions. 2 suffered miscarriages. The mother of one of them went mad due to hunger. Their children dropped out of school. Families had to be broken up as parents and children looked for livelihood in other places. That was the situation we found them in January 2011. A few months earlier, they gathered the courage to pin their hopes on the Commission on Human Rights. And we have very few resources, no? As the last recourse. Moved by the urgency of their need, Commissioner Cardona and I went to Taft to see what the CHR could do. Okay, 4 minutes, but tapos na. It was not the first time government functionaries had taken interest in their plight, but something in the way we dealt with them stirred their long-suffering hearts, minds, and bodies to action. In our presence, they regained their voice and told the mayor they were claiming their jobs back. Assisted by their regional office in Tacloban, they did the rounds of concerned government offices, CSC, COA, DILG, Bureau of Local Government Finance, to demand action and accountability. This added impetus to the administrative and criminal complaints CSE filed against Adalim in the office of the Ombudsman. Letters were written, affidavits executed, and visits paid to concerned officials until one by one their efforts paid off. The Ombudsman, rejuvenated by the resignation of Mercy Gutierrez, placed Adalim under preventive suspension. COA disallowed further payments to the replacements appointed by Adalim. BLGF sacked the municipal treasurer who was in cahoots with Adalim. DILG readily implemented the Ombudsman's directives. CSC assiduously followed up the progress of the case in the Ombudsman. Finally, by April 2012, Adalim was sacked and went down in history as the very first elected official, higher than barangay captain, removed from office through the awesome powers of the Ombudsman. In General Comment number 18, issued on 24 November 2005, the United Nations Committee on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights declared the right to work a fundamental human right, essential for realizing other human rights and forms, an inseparable and inherent part of human dignity. Every individual has the right to be able to work, allowing him to live in dignity. The committee held that state parties to the International Convention on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights are liable for violations of the obligation to protect the right to work whenever it fails to, and I quote, take all necessary measures to safeguard persons within their jurisdiction from infringements of the right to work by third parties or to protect workers against unlawful dismissal, unquote. In a fully functioning system, it would not have been that difficult to see how the principles discussed in the foregoing general comment were being applied when the CHR commenced its intervention in the case of the LGU employees. After all, the legal framework was already there, but starting from the guarantee of full protection for all workers' rights to due process and prompt disposition of cases in judicial and quasi-judicial bodies, constitutional and statutory safeguards were failing. How then could an agency like CHR, broken and limping, have set out to mainstream the right to work in a context characterized by apparent lawlessness? Perhaps you, the scholars and practitioners of public administration, I'm ending now, can study the case of the Taft employees and posit expert answers to my query. But as far as I'm concerned, success hinged upon the ability of the entire process to empower the rights holders while simultaneously building the capacity of duty bearers. Only when the employees started seeing themselves as workers imbued with inalienable rights did their personal understanding break free from the confines of self-pity, apathy, and fear. Exposure to the discourse of human rights gave them a cushioned floor for which they were able to bounce back with added vigor. They were state workers. They realized, and the state may not invoke its own rules to deprive them of what rightly belongs to them. Once back on their feet, they wasted no time nagging, cajoling, and even charming government offices to engage them back in a quest for lasting and effective solutions. They organized dialogues with regional directors to map strategic interventions. They always came prepared and didn't take no for an answer. If I were to sum this experience up, therefore, I have no other word in mind but empowerment. Power lies at the core of every relationship, and it is the business of human rights to let power flow towards the direction of oppression, marginalization, exploitation, and exclusion.